I can see that we have present councillors Anderson, Barker and Cowie. I'm not seeing councillors Dewar or Johnson-Dempsey present. I can also see that we have present councillors Kerr, Mars, McCreary, McLachlan and Ray. We have a number of officers present, and with that I'll pass back to yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any declarations of interest? No. So, listen, there's been a bit of a change to the agenda this morning. The item 7, I propose to bring it forward to the first item to allow our police colleagues to leave and attend some other more pressing matter, I believe. So I'm going to hand over. Hang on. Minutes of the previous meeting, we okay with that? Any issues with the previous meeting? No? Okay. Over to you, Inspector.
Thanks, Chair. My name is Chris Hoggins and I'm the Road Policing Inspector based at Motherwell, covering both North and South Lanarkshire. I've been invited along today to provide a short input about e-bikes. In kind of summary, e-bikes are classed as motor vehicles, some kind of technical data around them. They're allowed to be electrically assisted, but only up to a speed of 15.5 miles an hour for them to be classed as bicycles. And they've got a max power outage of 250 watts. To make them legal, pedals must still be in motion. But to add kind of complications around that, there are some exceptions where the electronic assistance of the e-bike can operate to allow people unable to push them off from a start. So that's where you see the push throttles or twist throttles. If the e-bikes are able to go at a greater speed of 15.5 miles an hour, it classes them as motorcycles or motor vehicles. Covering some common offences, if any of the above are breached, it does class them as a moped or a motorcycle, and the rider or operator requires that category of licence and insurance for the vehicle, and required to display L plates if they're a provisional driving licence holder, for example, and have carried out a CBT to allow them to operate the e-bike on the road. General offences covering kind of e-bikes we see is dangerous driving, careless driving, driving unfit through drink or drugs, driving under the influence of alcohol, no insurance, no driving licence, using an unregistered vehicle, and particularly relevant, driving a vehicle elsewhere on a road. And then there's also antisocial behaviour legislation that can be used. There is powers under terms of section 165 of the Road Traffic Act to seize an e-bike that has been adapted and has been used as a motorbike, and there's police powers to seize that. There's a number of operational considerations, Councillor, and that's when we kind of met briefly to discuss it. The majority of e-bikes used in criminality will fail to stop for the police, and at that point it's for the police officers using the national decision-making model to decide the proportionality of pursuing that bike. Considerations might be the time of day, the location, what PPE or personal protective equipment that the rider's got on, whether it's a helmet, gloves, or whether they've got a balaclava to conceal their identity and no PPE. The road traffic, the road conditions, how busy it is, the weather at the time of the pursuit, and then ensuring a sound rationale whether it's justified to continue to attempt to stop that vehicle. Ultimately, pursuing an e-bike is very high risk, and we've got to be confident that it's proportionate given what the suspected original offence might be, whether it's antisocial riding or whether it's something kind of more serious. In relation to motorcycles, so by definition the e-bikes have been modified. We have limited tactical options available to end that pursuit by use of a stinger and the helicopter or drone unit. And then once the vehicle stopped, An examination of the vehicle will be carried out to establish the offences. When we kind of spoke off table, within South Lanarkshire, the comparable collision data, I'm about to share, sorry, is management information just now, not kind of year-end stats, but within South Lanarkshire, since the start of the year, there's been 4 fatal road collisions. One involving a motorcycle, which was in the A70. That wasn't an e-bike, and it was a collision with an HGV. There's been 1 pedestrian and 2 car drivers. So the killed and serious injury data, statistics around e-bikes and the riders of those e-bikes being injured in South Lanarkshire isn't comparable yet. So based on the statistics that we've got just now, I personally would class the use of e-bikes as an antisocial behaviour problem just now, and which would sit more with local policing as opposed to road policing, whose priority is to reduce the number of people killed or seriously injured in the roads. And as I says, the comparative statistical data doesn't yet compare that that's a risk group for us. Out of the 8 fatals in both North and South Lanarkshire Council, 5 of the victims are over the age of 65. So from that, I'm prioritising my resources on older drivers and older road users. What we've done though, to support local policing, area commanders, we have delivered a number of training inputs, a bit more in depth of the legislation I've just covered with yourselves, to allow them to deliver local initiatives. We have produced a guidance document on legislation, and that's been distributed throughout South Lanarkshire Policing Division. We've also presented tactical options and considerations like the use of drones, good practice that's been seen elsewhere about housing officers, for example, sharing information about where these e-bikes are being stored, the use of unmarked patrols, and in Ayrshire Division last night, they were trialling using the drone in a village to detect and track e-bikes. However, that operation didn't go ahead because of the weather, but I'm quite interested to see how that plays out with a view to replicating it here. Again, we've carried out a number of bite-sized learning pieces that road policing have delivered to local policing so that they've got an increased understanding about the offences associated with the e-bikes. And Chair, when we met, I've offered you the opportunity to come out personally with us so that you can see the operational challenges that we face whilst dealing with e-bikes, and I would extend that to anybody present if you would like to come out and see that for yourselves. That's a really short kind of overview that I have provided about the e-bikes, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thanks very much, Chris. I mean, I'm mindful of the figures that you've stated, that there have been no fatals, and that's great to hear. It makes me very surprised that that is the figure, because I see quite a lot of type of job that I do. I'm out and about in the street and I see a lot of these e-bikes, but not only e-bikes, the e-scooters, which is part of the presentation, but I don't think you spoke too much about that, but I suppose it covers the same sort of issues.
Covers the same. Ultimately, they're prohibited and shouldn't be used in public.
So that's my point. My main sort of concern is the amount of e-scooters, and the fact that Police Scotland have again just recently repeated their social media postings informing people that they're illegal, completely illegal. You just can't use them anywhere. If you see an e-scooter, it's illegal, right? Unless you're looking over somebody's garden into their great big massive garden. But what really frustrates me is the amount that you see people are buying them for their kids, for presents. You go to just about any housing estate, you'll see them. And as I've mentioned to you, I think I mentioned to you when we spoke, if you go down to Curry's, big massive store that sells all sorts of electrical items, and as soon as you walk through the door, you can't escape. You have to walk around the stall that sells these e-scooters. I mean, it's just a joke. You know, these are illegal to be used in the public, and yet a big brand like Curry's have got them displayed. I would quite like to see a wee bit more sort of work between the police and the people who sell these things. You know, for example, as another example, at the Camping and Caravan show, exactly the same thing. The first stall that you see when you enter the SCCC, and you know how big that is the e-bikes and the e-scooters, because they're very lucrative. Every kid wants one. Can I get one? Right, son, Mum will get you a wee e-scooter. These are illegal, by the way, so just watch you don't get stopped to the police. It's almost farcical, Chris. Now, I don't mean to be too critical of the police here, but it's almost farcical that these things are illegal, but you just go anywhere and you see them. The e-scooters, I mean, the bikes, yeah, it's quite easy to soup up the bikes. But the other issue, and I'm sure I mentioned this to you, and just for the benefit of everyone here, I don't know the name of the brand, but it's basically a motorbike. It doesn't have pedals.
Suron.
Sorry?
Suron, I think
A
it is.
Suron. Yeah, it doesn't have pedals, so it's a motorbike. And I ride a motorbike. If I went out without a helmet, I'm pretty sure I'd get stopped pretty quickly with the police. But then you get the issue about whether you stop these guys. So, as an example to people, and I'm sorry if I'm going on like a broken record, I may have mentioned this before, in Neilsland Road, while in the middle of a driving lesson, I had one overtake me on the right side and one overtake me on the left side, and I was doing 30. The car was doing 30, and these two bikes overtook me. The one on the right side had a pillion, the one on the left didn't. They flew up to the top of the roundabout at the top of Mika Lernock, and they were out of sight in no time, easily doing over 40 miles an hour. No helmets on, no protection, young boys 14, 15 years old, and it's horrendous to imagine what might happen to these kids if they fall. But it's the damage that they can do to these other vehicles, and I'm just a bit bemused that Police Scotland aren't having more of an impact on. I know there's issues about resources, I know there's issues about safety, but I'm a member of the public. From a member of the public's point of view, it's really upsetting to see that this is carrying on almost with impunity.
I think, Councillor...
could you respond to that then when you go?
Aye, of course. As I kind of covered the South Lanarkshire statistics, it's our job to respond to the areas of greatest threat and harm. And statistically, for road safety, it's looking at older drivers for this council area. So that's where I'll continue to focus my resources. But I'm glad to hear that there's community engagement through that social media post you mentioned, reminding people that they are illegal, and enforcement activity is carried out when possible. It was just one of my own kind of thoughts about the example about Curry's selling, for example. Is it a consideration to implement some sort of local licensing laws to prohibit people selling them within South Lanarkshire?
I suppose trading standards could have a look at that. I could ask Fraser Carlin's department to have a look at that, but they aren't illegal to own them. And as you rightly said, if you confiscate one when you do, the person can come and collect it again. The parents can come and collect it for a fee. So it's not illegal to own one. So it's not illegal to sell them. It's where the people who buy them use them. And there's almost, can I say this? There's almost just a perception out there that these things are okay. And I've given Colin a really good example. I see this guy regular. A mature man, nice big jacket on, backpack on, good helmet, light on the front, going to his work in his scooter. I'm pretty sure this guy thinks he's doing no wrong. And everybody else seems to think that.
And the ones that are like time specific like that it's safe to build a plan to detect that person, that's certainly stuff that we can deal with when we're reported incidents like that. But it's just going back to that proportionality from kind of where, like you said, that kind of decent person, it's anticipated that he'll stop and comply, but it's the risk of the other example that you gave about the pillion passenger balaclavaed up driving dangerously, both overtaken and undertaken, the risk that comes with that we put that individual in, and also organisationally ourselves. So it just comes back down to the proportionality of the original offence. But when you can see the kind of two differences of those two examples that you gave. But as was said, kind of off table, I'm always happy to help.
Yeah. So I'm going to mention one more thing about the behaviour of these bikes, and I'll open up to anybody else who's got any other questions. Sorry to be hogging this. But there was another situation where there was two young guys, and I was driving my wife's car, and they were wheeling behind me. I could see them in the centre mirror, the rear view mirror, and they were wheeling right up, then braking, then wheeling. It was in Hill House Road, just outside the Civic Centre. And I ride a motorbike. I was always into motorbikes when I was a kid. And if I had been that age, I'm pretty sure I'd have had one of these things as well. I'll be honest with you. But the thing about these young guys, or young people, who they buy these things, or their parents buy these things, they're extremely fast, and it's as if they can't go fast enough. You know, we hear about the term boy racers. That's people on legal cars and legal motorbikes. But these kids are probably less responsible than the boy racers that you see, because at least they stop at traffic lights and go at reasonable speeds sometimes. These kids just want to max speed these things as much as they can, wheeling, overtaking cars on the right and the left, down pavements. It's just a miracle that there hasn't been something. I know there has been, but not in this area, so touch wood. But I'm sorry if that sounds like a bit of a rant from me.
No, not at all. And just to clarify, the example you gave about behind your wife's car, that's stuff like that's safe and good to investigate like afterwards, and then report the driver, because the more people that are reported and the bikes are seized, it's good disruption, albeit they can ultimately apply and pay to get their bike back. There's an opportunity to seize it if it's used, and we've got it. If we recover it within 24 hours of it's being used, we've got that kind of leeway to seize the vehicle, and again it feeds into that kind of disruption picture.
Thanks very much. So I'm going to open up to questions. I mean, members will maybe have their own issues in their own areas, and now's a good opportunity. And Colin and Colin, if you feel you want to ask the police any questions on this, I'm quite happy to allow that. Kenny.
Thanks, Chair. This is news to me until this morning. Until you said it. I didn't realise and just to clarify, they are all illegal if they're used on the public highway. They're only for use in somebody's garden. Is that the case? If they have no pedals.
So e-scooters, the ones that you would stand upright on and hold the handle, and unassisted ones you would propel it by using your foot. An e-scooter is illegal and is only for use in private spaces. So in that case, like you, Chair, I was in Cowes as well at the weekend, and you're right, they've got they should really have a big sign up saying these are illegal. They should be forced to put something up saying only for use on private property. That would fix it. Although it probably wouldn't, because they'd get them online, wouldn't they? They'd get them on Amazon, I suppose. So, yeah.
I think the problem for Currys is they don't really care, because they're getting sales and they're not obliged. And this is a point maybe that Chris was mentioning. If there was some sort of licensing, and I'm going to speak to Fraser Carlin about this. I don't know how successful that will be, but we'll speak to Fraser and what's his name, head of legal? Ian Strachan. It's worth exploring that, I think. But it's not just a South Lanarkshire, it's not just a Hamilton issue. It's right across Scotland. Incidentally, it's different in England. E-scooters are legal in England, which is a bit of a concern. But I suppose it adds to the fact that the point I was making, that you didn't know yourself, Kenny.
Absolutely.
There's a perception that these are, it's just their kids with their electric scooters. This is just a modern toy. It's not. You're not allowed to use them. And here I go again. Sides Bray. I don't know if you know Sides Bray, Chris. It's a really steep hill up towards the crematorium. An e-scooter, which you can soup up. You see the ones with the fatter tyres down there? They're really powerful. They're not just a wee kiddies thing. I seen them going up Sides Bray, overtaking cars going up the hill. Overtaking cars going up that really steep hill. So imagine the power. So you can tweak them. It's easy enough to do that. It's not that difficult to do that. So. Yeah. Okay. Ralph.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thanks for that report. I can only support our Chair on your concern for the use of the whole thing about e-bikes and scooters. I would hope we can get on top of it, because it's going to become if it can't be controlled, it's going to become normal and it's going to play absolute havoc with road safety. Even for the riders who obviously don't have any real concern or appreciation for their own safety, but obviously for pedestrians, and then a particular concern for kind of lorry drivers and bus drivers, who I've no doubt will end up being blamed. These, they think they can do it. They can nip in and out of traffic, and everybody else has to try and keep them safe. And as usual, I mean, the police are restricted in what they can do. I mean, already we're saying, oh, you can't, you shouldn't pursue them because that might cause a danger when you're actually trying to stop them to prevent the danger to themselves. I just take it's one of the few things where a punishment can be meted out in terms of confiscation. I'm not sure, but I mean, eventually, if the bikes are confiscated, it must start to dawn on them. But I don't know if you can actually do that, or if we'll end up with, oh no, the police can't confiscate them. Then what do you do? Because they're not registered, can't do anything. So thanks, Chair. I agree with you completely. Which any way of getting on top of this before it gets worse. I don't have a problem in my ward because it's a particularly rural ward, but in some of the towns and cities, you see a real problem, which will only get worse. Thanks.
Thanks, Ralph. Colin, I see you're... Colin Park.
Thanks, Chair, and again, thanks, Inspector, for that presentation. I think it's already a problem, Councillor Barker, and just where I live across in Cumbernauld a few weekends ago, I was just out washing the car and this young girl was whizzing round. You watched her a first time, a second time, she was bumping over the speed bumps and getting a wee jump. And then, I don't know whether it was a different bike or the same bike, then our younger brother came round as well. And this was from a well-to-do family, relatively nice area as well, and it was just the norm. It was as if they were going round in their bikes. So I think maybe a wee conversation to be had with kind of Colin and my team and maybe David in education as well, just to better understand what education materials we have. We're also in schools every other week, talking about school travel plans, and ironically probably encouraging sustainable travel to school, which some children and parents might think, well, that's good, that's kind of sustainable, but perhaps not. So I think there's certainly a conversation to be had there. Do we do anything just now, Colin? Is there any e-scooter or e-bike material out there?
We've just been dealing with it on a bespoke basis. So if a school is raised as an individual concern, then we do can engage with them on that. So we do promote scooting to school. That's a standard thing that we do, but certainly e-bikes isn't something that's cropped up in any great with any great focus in any of our primary schools that we've came across up to date. The only thing that we have shared is we've reshared the police social media campaign with some schools in the past. That's about the extent of our engagement so far.
Chris, you want to come back?
Yeah, it was just a point that I missed out in my presentation. Colin,
You put your mic on, Chris. Just press the button and Elizabeth Arnold.
sorry. It was something I'd missed out in my presentation that Colin reminded me of there. As part of our commitment to support vulnerable road users, a number of community and campus officers in South Lanarkshire Council were trained to deliver the young driver inputs. That's primarily sat with road policing to deliver up until the first Train the Trainers course that was carried out last month. Part of that course is the legislation about e-bikes and e-scooters. So that's a number of police officers within South Lanarkshire now got the knowledge to deliver the young driver or new driver inputs within the local community and schools that they're based in and cover the e-bike and e-scooter legislation as part of that. That first Train the Trainers course within local policing is a first for this area. and was well received, and we're looking to expand that out. So there'll be the majority, if not all, of the school-based officers within the policing division trained to do that.
Colin, did you want to come back here? I see you.
Thanks, Chair. I would just like to kind of pick up on the point about kind of trading standards, and I know you'll have a word with Fraser. I'll speak to him as well. I think just by the very nature of it, it's probably limited action that they can do because they're buying a product that can be used legally in the right location. So in terms of the trading standards side of it, I think they would struggle. I think what kind of Lorna was saying there as well, you know, maybe that just having a wee chat with some of the bigger local retailers might work. If nothing else, you know, they can take it back up to head office or something, just get some signage, some posters or whatever. And I think as well in terms of our materials, Colin was saying there, you know, we're encouraging, you know, active travel to and from school, scooting to school. I think we just need to make sure we don't miss the opportunity, Colin, to remind people that in big flashing letters and, you know, underlined, an e-bike or an e-scooter is not scooting to school. So I'm sure there's probably people around this table just now that have got people, children in their family who's probably got one of these, and I think that's the thing. We're all responsible, but we maybe just didn't fully understand what the implications were. So I think it's a really good presentation from the inspector. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm going to bring in a wee second on it. Excuse me. The point you made, Colin, about where you live, there's every chance that the parents who have purchased this scooter for these kids doesn't realise, just like Kenny, he may have bought a gift for a relative or someone unwittingly, you don't know. So going back to David and Colin's sort of perspective, we keep hearing this when there's any issues about drugs or alcohol, or education seems to be the focus. Education is getting that message out there. So from an education point of view, David, you know, Colin's obviously got a close connection with the schools, safe transport to schools. Is it worth having a look at what sort of literature might be provided to families in a gentle way, just to remind them? Because it's all school kids that you see using this, mainly school kids that you see using the scooters, but it's not them that's purchasing it, because they're hundreds of pounds. You know, their parents will be buying them or help them to buy them. So can you comment, David, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I'm quite happy, obviously, to work with Colin to see what literature, appropriate literature we can put out to our schools, just to raise awareness of the fact that they're not legal, first and foremost, the dangers of using them in and around urban and rural areas as well. So yeah, we'll look at something we can put out to schools as part of the overall road safety campaign that we have anyway, if that's okay. Thanks, Chair.
Lorna.
It was really just a quick add-in to say, obviously, with Christmas only 7-8 weeks away,
Yeah.
we'll probably going to see these in a lot of the kids' Christmas lists
Absolutely.
as well. Ideally, it would be good to get the prevention team into like Curry's before then. That's not a promise, but we'll certainly get it done as soon as we can, with that in mind as well.
I suppose a gentle way, asking Curry's to be a responsible retailer and just remind people or inform people, you can use these, but only just remember you're not allowed.
And
It's just a sort of little add-on, isn't it?
yeah, I guess we'd be relying on their goodwill to do that,
Yeah.
to cooperate with us, because again, as you
exactly.
know, you can buy them, so we can ask.
Well,
That's
it's something, isn't it?
Yep.
We've got to start somewhere. I don't see any other questions or comments, so I need to thank you for coming along, Chris, and Lorna for raising this issue with Chris. So, and I look forward to hearing when I'm going to get out for a shift with the guys.
I will be in contact after bonfire night, and we'll arrange that, and we'll extend the invite either through yourself or Lorna, if anybody else wants to come out for a wee ride along to see the operational challenges that e-scooters face. And just before I say thanks for the invite, with your permission, and I think Lorna's supportive of this, I'd like to see if road policing can attend all of your future forums.
Absolutely. That goes without saying, absolutely. Just the nature of the forum and what we do in your role, so absolutely welcome that. And I suppose, you know, e-scooters, e-bikes is a kind of bit of a hot potato, especially leading up to Christmas, but you know, if you can think about something that you think is worthwhile bringing to the forum, you know, I'm sure you will, given your role. So I look forward to that. That's really interesting. I appreciate that. Thank you very
Chair.
much.
Thank you, everybody.
So with that, I can allow you now to leave, to go to your other engagement. Thanks again, Chris. Okay. So it's item 3 on the agenda now, and it's a 20 mile an hour speed limit, pages 7 to 14. And Colin Park's going to speak to that paper. Colin?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone again. The purpose of this report is to advise the Forum on our progress towards the National 20 mile an hour strategy and to present our emerging proposals for implementation locally. The paper essentially seeks the Forum's support for the principles outlined and with the intention to present this to Community and Enterprise Committee later this year, likely to be in December, subject to today's discussion. It's quite a full paper, so you'll be pleased to know I'm just going to give you the kind of headlines from each section. In terms of background, members will be aware the Scottish Government's road safety framework to 2030 sets national casualty reduction targets, and the programme for government committed to ensuring all appropriate built-up roads have a 20 mile an hour limit by 2025. Probably just worthwhile saying there that across Scotland, all 32 local authorities are at different stages of that implementation, and it's not going to be all done by 2025, because that's also known as next month. So there's been a lot of progress on this over the years. You maybe remember we brought a paper a few years ago to this committee, to this forum, just to have a debate, and it generated a lengthy debate and discussion. So I think we now know the direction of travel, and that's what this paper sets out. Our local transport strategy already supports 20 miles an hour in residential areas and outside schools. And as I said, touched upon there, a national task force has now established a consistent criteria-based approach for assessing roads suitable for 20, including the proximity of such roads to educational settings, community facilities and areas with vulnerable road users. Section 4 goes into a little bit of detail about the benefits of 20 miles per hour, and just to kind of pulling out some of the key points here. 20 mile an hour limits are proven to reduce casualties and the severity of injuries, especially for pedestrians and cyclists. Research indicates a 1 mile per hour reduction in speed can reduce collisions by 6%. The risk of fatality is significantly lower at 20 mile an hour compared to 30. And you maybe remember from our last discussion, just Wales were going through a similar initiative, but evidence from Wales and Spain demonstrates substantial reduction in casualties and fatalities following the introduction of lower speed limits. Additional benefits can include smoother traffic flow, potential improvements in air quality. It seems to be a suggestion of minimal impact in journey times and a greater protection for vulnerable road users. Studies in Edinburgh also show that such schemes are cost effective even if you don't introduce additional traffic calming. Within South Lanarkshire, what's the kind of headlines in terms of casualty stats? So in the last 3 years, 21% of all casualties and 23% of all collisions occurred on 30 mile an hour roads, excluding A and B class. And reducing the speed limit to 20 mile an hour could reduce casualties by 11 to 30%, potentially saving up to 22 lives or serious injuries per year, and reducing societal costs by potentially up to 3.17 million annually. For members understanding, you know, we do put a cost on a slight, a serious and a fatality, and that's obviously built up on a lot of empirical evidence over the years, and it just allows us to assess what interventions cost versus what the benefits may be. It can be a bit coarse to actually put a value on it, but it's just a way of measuring it and working out best value there. The majority of pedestrians and cyclists occur in 30 mile an hour roads, highlighting the need for change. In terms of the emerging proposals, we are recommending that we reduce the current 30 mile an hour limit in residential areas in town centres and near schools to 20 miles per hour. A and B class roads will generally remain at 30 miles per hour unless specific justification exists. We will require to go through and promote TROs, a process that can take between 6 to 9 months and include statutory consultation. And that's the kind of gist of this paper. So we will start post Community and Enterprise Resource Committee, where we'll obviously seek approval to progress with this. We will start to introduce a programme of the proposals, and we'll hopefully secure the funding that we need from Transport Scotland, and we'll probably take an area-based approach first, and we'll start to promote them. We'll promote that. TROs, by the very nature, you'll all be aware that we will engage with Police Scotland, Fire and Rescue, local members to understand whether the proposals that we're taking forward and we're proposing are appropriate, and at that point, obviously roads can be added in, roads can be taken out, and we can have that discussion. I've no doubt this will generate a fair bit of debate and discussion with communities, but the TRO process, by the very nature of it, agreeing today or agreeing in December at community and enterprise doesn't mean we're doing it. It just means we're progressing with a programme to do it through an appropriate level of consultation. Another initiative that kind of referenced within the paper is trying to address community concerns about speeding. So not fully discussed this with colleagues in Police Scotland, but we intend to do that in the coming months, where we are looking at a bit like our community safety wardens that we have across the council with the badged up vehicles, the cameras on top as well. It's been something I've been keen to take forward for many, many years. So we're looking to have vehicles badged up, obviously not enforcement because the council doesn't enforce, but some kind of behavioural change type vehicle where we can deploy, roads can deploy these to schools, to other locations, and then obviously whatever intelligence we gather with that, link in with Police Scotland colleagues who can take that forward within the resources that they have available. In terms of employee implications, this is a big piece of work, a significant piece of work. So I see this being a 2, 3, 4 year programme of implementation. Noting TROs can take between 6 and 9 months by the very nature. Financial implications, a previous estimate for a wide-scale rollout of 20 miles an hour initiatives across Scotland was around about 2 to 3 million. So we're now of the view that's maybe sitting about 3 to 4 million. Now, and we do require external funding from Scottish Government or Transport Scotland. This is not something we'll be able to prioritise or fund ourselves. Funding arrangements post-May 26 remain unclear, but I do expect that road safety will remain a high priority, and I've actually got a meeting tomorrow, Chair, with kind of road safety managers from Transport Scotland to have a discussion. In terms of climate change, sustainability and other implications, as you'd expect, lower speeds are expected to encourage active travel, reduce reliance on private vehicles and support the Council's sustainability and climate change objectives. There are no other significant risks associated with the report, and the Forum just asked to note the context of the report and hopefully support the principles of the approach and noting the next steps for committee consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Colin. Members will be aware that we discussed this a while back, and I mean, I've got certain views on it, but it's been well demonstrated that the benefits of reducing speeds certainly reduces accidents as well. And it's just about the implementation of it is where it's going to happen. So it's a very complex process, and it will take a bit of time, as Colin has said. Susan Kerr.
Oh, hi. Yeah, really pleased to hear that this has come to this now, that it's progressing, and been looking forward to this day. Although I'll take note of what Colin's saying there about implementation, could take up to 2 to 3 years, etc. I'm just wondering, obviously, I'm talking from experience of my own ward and the town that I live in, and I'm just wondering, every day I see this, and it's quite a dangerous road with very narrow pavements, and there's school children walking on the road and big cars going up and down, etc., etc. You know the story, but anyway, just on the implementation, would it be like areas that would be classed as like priority, like take priority then, in getting it introduced maybe sooner than others over the piece?
Colin?
Thank you, Chair, and Councillor Kerr as well for that question. I'm sure every member in every ward could probably make a case for their area being a higher priority. We will, subject to this going through committee in December and today's hopefully support, we will look at whether there are any areas where there could be an obvious priority. For example, kind of areas of multiple deprivation, which inevitably have always seen kind of higher than we would like number of accidents within that area. We will look at that, but I think by the very nature of what you were saying there, Councillor Kerr, as well, certain roads will be a focus for communities, for schools, for ward members as well. We need to balance up what the road's there to do, what's the function of the road, and that's why I think it's quite clear residential roads are more than likely going to be 20, A and B class roads are going to be 30, and it's the bits in between. If you think of the Straven area, which is possibly what you're referring to, Councillor Kerr, you know, you have very tight historical town and village there, but you've got an A-class road going through the middle of it, and it's finding that kind of balance. I can't remember what the speed limits up there are, but we've probably got 20 mile an hour limits in some areas already, maybe part-time, maybe advisory. So this is a long-term programme, but we just need to get this over the line in terms of how we're going to implement it. And hopefully post May 26, there will be suitable levels of funding to allow us to progress with that, because that is a key point. As much as it's a really important initiative for us to progress with, we do need the funding to go with it, and because this is obviously a legislation change as well, we are hopeful that funding will come forward from will continue to be made available from Transport Scotland. Thanks.
So I'm glad that Susan asked that question here, and to hear your response that it's an A-class road that runs through the middle of Straven. So I suppose this is where, you know, if it's an A-class road, it wouldn't necessarily mean it's excluded from it, but if you think of the A-class road coming from East Kilbride, it goes down through centre of Straven, bends round and heads up to go towards Muirkirk. Now, I know the area well, it's very narrow, and some could argue that because of the amount of parked cars there, it also already creates its own traffic calming because of the amount of parked vehicles there is. So it's quite a narrow road, as Susan has suggested, and there's a lot of parked vehicles there. But the implementation of a 20 sign, and we've had discussions about this in Stuart Laird as well. Say at a quieter period where there's less cars or less traffic in the road, some might be able to get through there at a higher speed, maybe do 30 miles an hour, which you would argue probably isn't it that safe. But on areas like this, select areas, and no showing favouritism to Susan or Straven, but it is just a good example. I would certainly see the benefits of that, and I'm sure you'd agree. I'd see the benefits of a 20 in that particular area, because if people see the 20 sign, it catches your attention, and if people don't drive at 20, at least they drop down to somewhere below 30. And it was Stuart that mentioned this, and it's a really good point. Like Lark Hall, for example, it's quite a wide road, and it's quite a busy road, and you know, there's pedestrian crossings here. It creates its own sort of calming, but you don't see people doing 20 in Lark Hall Main Street. People just don't. They go faster than 20, but they're below 30, and that really that makes a difference. And unless you're getting enforcement in all of these roads, you're not going to force people to do 20 mile an hour, because you just don't have the resources for the police to be coming in to catch people for speeding. But the 20 sign in an area like Straven or some other sort of village type location, there's a message there, isn't there? There's a subliminal message. It's not subliminal, it's there. It catches your eye, and it makes you think a little bit more careful, and it does reduce the speed. So Straven's a really good example. So based on that question from Susan, and it's in your report, would you, without asking you to commit to anything, but would Straven be one of the places that you would be looking at as a priority, or that type of location?
Yeah, certainly that kind of type of location, and I think we would be looking at doing it in like an area-wide basis as well. So it might be we can do all the areas, you know, the towns and villages within a south area or an east area. We want to get the message across. I think, as I said to you before, Chair, you know, what was initially been proposed, what they did in Wales, which I think there's some lessons learned, massive lessons learned to be made there. But they had that overnight big bang where overnight you couldn't drive in Wales. This was the speed limit. We were going down that direction here, you know, a number of years ago.
I remember it well.
And I've, again, been quite open to say it from an enforcement PR point of view. I welcomed that approach because it meant you got that overnight. But now what we're going to have is South Lanarkshire are going at a slightly different pace to other authorities. Even within South Lanarkshire, we'll be going at a slightly different pace as well. Because what we don't want to do is, if we went for an all singing, all dancing TRO for the whole of South Lanarkshire and we got one objection, none of it would happen. Whereas if you break it down and chunk it down into kind of smaller areas, then you can take forward initiatives and say the rural area in South Lanarkshire through our towns and villages has been tackled, it's been dealt with. Now we're moving on to urban areas, and obviously Straven's sitting in that rural stroke urban kind of boundary, if I can call it that. So yeah, we will be looking at developing a suitable implementation programme, but in full dialogue with elected members. Thanks.
And I'm glad to hear that you were saying you're referencing Wales, and also I've referenced, I think it was the Lothians, and it was the commander told me, or deputy commander that told me where they had it in the Lothians somewhere, and then he took it out because it wasn't working. And we've seen the problems in Wales as well. So this sort of gentle, progressive approach seems to work better, because I certainly had my views, and colleagues will remember that, about this sort of blanket 20 mile an hour. I wasn't in favour of that at all. So thanks for this paper, and it's more acceptable to me, and I'm sure to other members. Norman Ray.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. I mean, firstly, I think I've said before, but I'm quite enthusiastic about this. I think certainly for my ward, I think it will be quite beneficial. I'm sure that's the case for a lot of other areas as well. My question's really around implementation in terms of councillor input in decisions as to which roads may or may not have the 20 mile an hour limit, or there might be some people who'd argue that one shouldn't have it. In other cases where it is maybe an A or B class road, a local member might be arguing in favour of a 20 mile an hour limit for that. So I suppose I'm asking what sort of involvement will councillors have, or chance to have input in the decisions around specific roads. And the second one, I think from the previous discussion, has probably already been answered, but just around the TROs, whether they have to have one per road, or can group roads together or not. Thanks.
Thanks, Norman. Colin?
Thank you, Chair and Councillor Ray as well. Just picking up your 2 points here. In terms of councillor input, we have emerging plans for lots of our towns and villages already, and we'll look to share them with you as soon as. I'm just wrestling with whether there's a conversation to be had at area committees as well on this. But individual members will be given probably several opportunities to influence what the proposals look like, including then at the official TRO stage as well. What I would say, though, and hopefully I can say this in a respectful way, we need to ensure consistency across the area. So just because a councillor wants a road made 20 miles per hour, as officers, we'll need to make sure that, it's the same as that similar road in another ward. And we can just have that debate. And that's why I think this slow and steady approach that you mentioned there, Chair, will be good. We might not get it right the first time round. We maybe have to adapt it. Maybe the second time round it'll be a wee bit kind of more streamlined and a bit more beneficial. Might be able to actually demonstrate that phase one's been very successful, and that when you go into a stage phase two with another group of wards or areas, then we can obviously demonstrate that success. In terms of TROs, Councillor Ray, I think as I touched upon, we could promote one full order for the whole of South Lanarkshire, but I think that would probably fall very quickly, because we will get objections, we will get people not happy with it. So we'll probably do it more on a phased basis, just so we can get some success. What we can then do, just to make it a bit easier, you can promote individual TROs, and then 3-4 years down the line you can consolidate them into one order, and then basically that becomes your baseline. Just now across South Lanarkshire, it's actually, I'm sure it's a 1980s consolidation order for all the speed limits. So if we make changes now, we just change one order. But again, that's just maybe a wee technicality.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Colin. And Norman, Colin's response, councillors have an input, but learned this over a long period of time, and I'm sure you're understanding this as well, that we can have views, but we take them to officials. The officials are the experts, and we've got to be guided by the experts and work within guidance and guidelines and so on. So I've learned that. A lot of people think as a councillor you can just wave a magic wand and make something happen, but you've got to work with officials and take guidance from them. And in particular areas like your own ward and Brownside Road, I know there's been a lot of focus there, Norman, and I suppose maybe that's what you were sort of talking about, but that's been discussed at length. I've been involved in that as well, and get back to whether or not a 20 mile an hour speed limit would work there is, I've listened to Colin, I've listened to Stuart Laird and their views, and what would be good. I'm not going to say one thing or another is better. One is better than the other, but I've had good examples of it's not necessarily always going to get the the impact that you're looking for just by doing one particular, implementing one particular measure. Stuart spoke, he can speak at length about different examples of where something has been tried and it's not got the impact that you're looking for, and it's almost pointless having it there in the first place because people just ignore it. I suppose I was touching on that earlier about when you have a 20 limit, people don't drive at 20, but they certainly drive below 30, mostly. So thanks for your question, Norman.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to come back at all? Oh, you've got them all. That's fine. Ralph?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that report, Colin. I mean, it is a progress report. It's not actually, I mean, it's still talk at this stage. Neither does it mention enforcement. I do have a statutory 20-mile-an-hour limit outside my house, and absolutely nobody respects it. From trucks, buses, cars, quad bikes, everything. Nobody takes any notice of it. I would just be happy if they kept to the 30-mile-an-hour limit. However, there's a couple of things in this, and I imagine you know it quite well, Colin, but there were two points which does, well, it's something for the future anyway. One, where we have a 20-mile-an-hour limit, we don't need traffic calming. It seems to say that. Now, I would agree with that. I don't know if you can make any comment on that. And then it also runs through the slightly different take on how you decide what a village is, with how many houses and over what number of metres. And I mean, I'm really, the fact that we're looking at 20 miles an hour limit and defining what a village is, when we have a village, narrow road, anybody else would call it a village. But because it doesn't exactly comply with government guidance, there isn't a limit, 60 miles an hour. And here we're talking about 60 miles an hour through a narrow road, through a village. And here we're talking about possibly 20 mile an hour limits elsewhere. It really does not make sense. I get an email from Transport Minister saying, this is just guidance. Colin may say that's okay until you come to get a traffic order, and you'll find it's not just up to a local authority to decide that it's statutory guidance. But I do wonder at times why we have this, this road safety forum, when to all intents we have a village with no speed limit, or the 60 mile an hour speed limit. So any comment on that? I'm sure I commented before. There was just one little point you made about because a councillor thinks. I don't think any councillor comes with a proposal just on his own personal basis. So always got to remember what the community the councillor represents is thinking. Right, thanks. Anyway, if you get any comment on those 2 points, Colin, about 20 miles an hour, not needing traffic calming, and any change so we can get a speed limit, a sensible speed limit, safety speed limit on villages that don't seem to quite comply with government guidance. Thanks.
Before you come in there, Colin, can you tell me whereabouts in the paper is it, Ralph, it mentions the not necessarily needing
it's
traffic?
It's quite a long report, so if I can't find it, that's okay.
It's okay. Colin.
I'm sure Colin knows exactly what it's about.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Barker, for your comments. First of all, I think just in terms of enforcement, paragraph 412 does kind of cover slightly reference to Police Scotland's position in terms of what their enforcement priorities will be for 20 million initiatives across Scotland. I think I've said before, I'm on the Road Safety Governance Board for Scotland in my Scots role, and we work with the Cabinet Secretary and Police Scotland, road policing as well. So, Police Scotland are behind us, but again, they've obviously got pressures like us in terms of available resources, but they will take a risk-based approach to the enforcement of all speed limits. And Lorna maybe come in later on that. In terms of, yes, we can put in 20 mile limits without traffic calming. I think historically we've always tried to encourage more physical measures, but that's kind of traffic engineering, over the last 10, 15, 20 years has sought to do that. But we can introduce it without traffic calming. However, there's a balance between we introduce it where, speed limits, Councillor McLachlan had said earlier on, through Straven, it's possibly more or less self-enforcement already because of the environment, the kind of function of the road, the kind of characteristics of the road, and the majority of drivers will travel at an acceptable speed, or what should be an acceptable speed. So yes, in some questions, we can put it in without traffic calming. The second point about towns and villages, I'm trying to remember the town that you're talking about, but it's escaping me just now. But we have the guidance, and it is guidance, and that's what we must try and adhere to get that consistency. If you're going through a town or a village in South Lanarkshire and you're going down to the borders, you don't want to go through an environment that's different, where South Lanarkshire's chosen not to, or they have chosen to introduce a speed limit, and then you go through the exact same town in another town, another council area, and it's different. So it's trying to get that consistency across Scotland. That's not only for drivers, but for police to enforce as well. Where there's opportunities at the margins to vary from that guidance, I think, as Councillor Ray was asking earlier on, can members influence that? Yes, they can. And we'll happily have that dialogue as we're going through the kind of early promotional stages. Thanks, Chair.
I'm mindful of Ralph's comment, and I've seen areas, it's not a village, it's not a town, but there might be like half dozen or so houses, and there are people get a driveway. There's one very close to here, it's in Lime Kilburn. It's a 60 miles an hour speed limit, and it drops down to 50 just as you reach the junction, but there's a row of houses that are still within the 60 miles an hour speed limit. Thankfully, it's on quite a tight bend, and people will reduce their speed because of the bend anyway, but I have seen other locations. So it's opened up a can of worms here, Colin, I'm afraid, because they're I see it often because I'm out and about, where something like Ralph, I don't know exactly where Ralph's talking about, but you see areas that does have some houses. It's not big enough to make it a village or a town, but the speed limit's 60, and I'm not saying it's all in South Lanarkshire, but it is noticeable. And you think, my goodness, imagine trying to reverse your car out of the driveway there, which you shouldn't do, you're better reversing in, but that's my own personal preference. So, can you touch on that at all, Colin, as to why that would be left at 60, even though there's houses there? Because they deserve the same access and egress to their properties anybody would do, I would argue.
Yeah. If I get this wrong, I'll bring in Colin for this one. I might have been too far away from TRO promotions for a while now, but it will simply be down to that criteria that Councillor Barker was referencing. So, you've got small towns, villages, hamlets, whatever you want to call them, and there's a distance, the number of houses within a set distance, and it's just basically falling into that criteria or not. However, as you and I highlighted, you highlighted a couple of weeks back when we were talking, across Scotland, that consistency is not always there. There are some towns and villages and hamlets up north which are different. So there is an opportunity for us to do it. What I'm responsible for is making sure for consistency within South Lanarkshire. The speed limits that we have in force across South Lanarkshire now have been developed over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 odd years. We've got a new initiative here today that we're looking, to kind of establish a new framework, a new principle for us to move forward with. I think, as Councillor Barker was saying, it's only an update paper, but it's a fundamental update paper where we're going to get the buy-in from hopefully the forum today to establish this new baseline, take it to full community and enterprise in December, and move forward with it. So I think it's pretty fundamental and slightly more than just an update. We are looking for support on this. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, that, Ralph?
Just one point, if I may. we don't have consistency. Hardly 5 miles away from the particular problem that I do have in Clydesdale East, there's another village where I can only imagine there are 2 houses, and yet it has 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Now, I don't want you to take that 30-mile-an-hour speed limit off because it doesn't comply, but as I say, we don't have consistency. Thanks.
Sure, Colin will note that. Kenny?
Thanks, Chair. As Colin knows, the only street I ever talked to him about really is Castle Avenue, runs between Bothwell and Unningson Road, and at the moment it's 30 miles an hour. It could be 10 miles an hour speed limit there, and it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference. In fact, it would probably be more dangerous. At the moment, I drive along there at 30 miles an hour because I have to drive that road every day, and there are people up tailgating me, trying to overtake. If I'm driving along there at 20 mile an hour, which I will, because I don't want to be I'm like driving Miss Daisy driving along that road, because when the police are there doing speed traps, I don't want to be the one that gets caught, because that would be extremely embarrassing, given I keep banging on about getting speed traps there. So what's the view on that? I wouldn't be campaigning for 20 miles an hour on Castle Avenue. I would want that to be one of the last ones for safety reasons, because people would overtake at dangerous spots, speed bumps, roundabouts that we have on it. And I'm sure Castle Avenue is typical of many other streets or roads in South Lanarkshire. So in the media last week, there was maybe I'm buying the wrong newspapers, but there was a thing saying it was given the amount of people who had a road deaths due to the reduced speed limits because of that very thing, overtaking dangerously. So any thoughts on that, Colin?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor McCree as well. Possibly an article, maybe the A9, where there's been reduced speed limits there, and obviously it does encourage overtaking. So, in terms of Castle Avenue, I'll be honest, I don't know what the proposals are for that one. We'll obviously share them when they're available. I'd like to think that you're obviously, it's a 30 mile an hour just now, you're driving at 30, you're a responsible driver. Hopefully the good majority of people will drive similarly on there. They might just be above 30, and they're obviously breaking the speed limit, but they're generally within the 30 mile an hour limit. You'll always get people who ignore any speed limits, overtake you probably even on 30 just now. If we were to introduce 30 in Castle Avenue, and I'm not saying we are, but on Castle Avenue or any other roads, I would just think that those responsible drivers like you will just drive a wee bit slower. You'll still get people overtaking you potentially, hopefully not an increased level, but I think this will just change the threshold and the baseline for the 85 percentile of drivers who do drive sensibly. Unfortunately, I think Lorna and her colleagues will still have to deal with the 15% of people that don't through whatever enforcement they can direct towards this. Thanks, Chair.
Kenny, do you want to come back to that?
Not really. I mean, we're all here. We all want the roads to be safer, and obviously I want the roads to be safer as well, but I'm just not sure this will always, in every instance, make that road safer. I guess that's what I'm coming from.
I don't think that's been suggested really, is it, Colin?
As I said, we're purposely not wanting to go into too much detail about what we're proposing locally in individual streets today. I could happily pick that up with yourself and other ward members in the coming weeks and months. It's more just to establish the principle, and then we can adopt that and apply it across the areas. Thanks.
I know the road, Kenny. I know Castle Avenue, and this might be the wrong word, but it lends itself to people who are in a hurry. There are sections of the road where it's quite long, there's good visibility. If you're sitting at a speed limit and somebody behind you's in a rush, off they go.
Yeah.
And that argument about a speed limit that's likely to be adhered to, there's that saying, you're better been hung for a sheep as hung for a lamb. So if you're over the speed limit, I'll just go for it anyway. But I think it's a 30 on that road at Castle Avenue at the moment, is it a 30? I wouldn't suggest for a minute you'd make it 40, because if it was 40, it'd be more dangerous. But it's not. It's a road that links up residential areas, but there's no residences kind of looking straight onto it. So you could almost suggest that would be like, for example, when you leave Carluke going towards Lanark, there's a section of road there that changes to a 40. and I've had people overtake me on that road as well. But that's just down to bad driving, I suppose. People get a bit desperate. In that particular area, I think you'll know better than me, but is that sometimes used as a kind of a rat run? I hate to use that terminology, but that road is a quieter road compared to the main street. So from Uddingston right through to Bothwell, you can skip along that road. And when people, what I've noticed in driver behaviour, when people take a shortcut, to guarantee that they're going to get some benefit from a shortcut, they drive like a blinking maniac. And I see it in certain roads in Hamilton, where they're flying up the streets because, for example, Hamilton Top Cross, if you go up to Duke Street, you can go up to High Patrick Street, and you can come back out onto Woodside Walk, I think it is. So, and you see people really rushing to try and prove to them, it's just my own perception of it, they're trying to prove to themselves, well, I've got a benefit there, so they really go really fast in these areas. And measures have been taken, Colin, as you'll know, around about Chestnut, is it Chestnut Crescent, or
Yeah, it might be,
people were using that as a kind of rat run. It leads on to the bottom of Silverton Hill Avenue.
Yeah.
So all of these things, you know, we could start a massive discussion. I'm guilty of doing that right now, I suppose, but it's part of this discussion, isn't it? It's looking at areas where measures can be put in place to make the roads safer. And if speed limits is the right thing to do, then, you know, input from local members like yourself, and the fact that the question that Norman asked as well about local member input, that's always useful, because we see things that officers don't necessarily see because they need to be there for a purpose. We're using them for different reasons. Okay with that then?
Okay,
Kerry?
thanks.
Right. Julia Mars. Julia.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've listened to lots of other comments, and I'll be brief because some of what I'll say has already been covered. I do agree that consistency across the network is really important, and that drivers they almost have to have a muscle memory of what they need to be doing, where they should follow signage, they should know what they should be doing, but consistency means that they're not having to make that decision about what they should be doing, and hopefully if they're unsure they would err on the side of caution and lower their speed. So that, I think, does mean there's some learning about the way that we already have 20-mile-an-hour limits around our schools, where some are part-time and some are mandatory full-time. That, I don't think, has been completely understood by a lot of drivers, and especially at night time. I think that those areas can look quite different. In the daytime, there's lots of things that drivers would hopefully notice and realise they should be doing 20 miles an hour. But then at night, that does change. So the characteristics of, as we approach areas that are going to be 20s, I think, need to consider what they look like at night time as well as daytime. I totally agree with colleagues who say that you know, where villages can look characteristically different, they are still villages, and it's important that we consider the 20-mile-an-hour limit in terms of the needs of the people there, rather than whether they follow an exact criteria. I'm also mindful for vulnerable road users, and I noticed that the criteria does detail that, and I would hope that safe walking routes to school would be part of that thinking, where we might not be within you know, the absolute criteria, but if it's a safe walking route to school, you should have an expectation that it's going to have a sensible speed limit. I'm also mindful where we do have 20-mile-an-hour limits in place already, but you may be coming from a 50-mile-an-hour limit or even a 60-mile-an-hour limit straight into a 20. And what happens in that moment? Because you really have to anticipate that 20-mile-an-hour limit to be doing 20 when you're supposed to be doing 20. So I'm wondering about the drop down where you do have a big A-class road that's got a 60-mile-an-hour limit. How do you safely have someone approach that and be doing 20 at the line of that sign, rather than slamming on the anchors from 60 and going, oh, okay, I'm supposed to be doing 20. They won't be doing 20 until half along that village. So just some thoughts.
I've spoke to Colin and Stuart many times about this, but things like Dragon's Teeth and different other, Fernie is a good example, Colin, where it's just pieces of I don't know, signage and different other road features that can bring it to your attention. But you're right, coming from 60 straight down to 20, most of the times when that happens, you've got sort of countdown markers as you're coming up towards. That's my own experience. But Colin, You can respond.
Thanks, Chair. That's exactly what I was going to say. I think Councillor Marr's points well made. It's that transition from a national speed limit down to 20. Some of our towns and villages we probably already have. You're going from 60 to national to 40 or national to 30, then maybe down to 20. We don't have too many speed limit changes, but we do need to make sure there's sufficient countdown markers, Dragon's Teeth, gateway signage or whatever. Again, and that will all form part of the £4 million cost we need to bring this in across our towns and villages. And again, these signs need to be lit as well, so there's lots of costs kind of associated with that as well. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks. Okay, I don't see anyone else, so the recommendation is to note, so I'll move with note this item. Okay.
Agreed.
Agreed. All agreed. Item 4 on the agenda. Education, training and publicity initiatives, pages 15 to 24, and it's Colin Smith. Colin.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to advise the Forum of the ongoing ETP initiatives within South Lanarkshire. This is quite a standard report that's often reported to the Forum, so I'm sure members are familiar with some of the contents and initiatives, and this just provides a further update. From section 3.1 outlines the Junior Road Safety Officer scheme, which continues within South Lanarkshire, providing vital road safety inputs within our primary schools in a peer learning and a whole school context. This year, 99 schools have signed up to participate, with approximately 304 pupils being active as Junior Road Safety Officers. And the responsibilities and activities that they're involved within and they promote are detailed within section 3.1.3. To support the new Junior Road Safety Officers in their role during this academic year, we held an open day on the 16th of September at Shartler Country Park, with various partners including the police, fire and rescue, Living Streets, the Reinvention and other council services such as fleet and air quality officers. 63 schools were in attendance at that event, took part gaining information, resources to aid them in promoting safe, active and sustainable transport and travel once they're back at school. Moving on to 3.2, this details the annual road safety calendar competition, which is opened out to all schools across the council area. It had a closing date of the 26th of September, and the group topics which were set this year are detailed within 3.2.2. 86 schools took part, and the office received 2,488 entries to the competition. Judging of the top 5 has taken place, as well as judging for the overall calendar winner, and the winner will be announced shortly, and we thank the Forum for those that have voted for that. The next items, item 3.3, 3.4 and 3.5 detail walk to school initiatives within our primary schools. Firstly, the Living Streets Travel Tracker and Walk Once a Week scheme, which is a daily interactive digital tracker used within each classroom on a daily basis. Reward badges are then used to incentivise active travel to and from school, as well as other activities such as leaderboards and challenges being made throughout different terms of the year. Feedback from schools that are taking part in this scheme have found it beneficial, and there's some experiences detailed directly from them within item 3.3.3. Project officer support and other linked activities are provided to these 18 schools that are taking part within this initiative. And the council also runs its own WOW scheme to primary 5 classes, which the paper details to encourage safe and active travel. Seasonal wall charts are provided to these schools and are used within each classroom to monitor travel behaviour. And there's currently 30 schools signed up to this. As always, Walk to School Week, which takes place in May, is promoted across the school network, with a limited number of resources provided to the schools, as well as additional on-loan materials provided to schools who are wanting to do local activity also. Moving to 3.6, the Sustrans Big Walk and Wheel Challenge took place from the 24th of March to the 4th of April. This is a UK-wide challenge to encourage walking, wheeling, safe scooting and cycling to school. And a total of 54 South Lanarkshire schools took part in this challenge, with many holding local events to incentivise and promote active and sustainable travel. Moving on to Bikeability Scotland cycle training within item 3.7. You're familiar with this scheme, but it's designed to support the next generation of confident and responsible road users. with 2 levels of cycle training being coordinated within South Lanarkshire by the Traffic and Transportation section. Level 1 focusing on basic skills, and then Level 2 which covers an element of on-road training. And a table has been provided at 3.7.3 showing delivery across the last 5 academic years. For the last completed year, 58 schools completed at least 1 level of bikeability training, 58 delivered level 1 and 43 schools delivering at level 2. The Traffic and Transportation section run a number of instructor courses for school staff and volunteers throughout the year. We've already run 3 of these this academic term so far, and we'll have further courses at the start of 2026. To support this scheme, we continue to make available a number of bikes, helmets and practical support to schools to enable more pupil participation and school participation within the scheme. Finally, 3.8 details some national media campaigns which have been in place in previous months, either through partners such as Road Safety Scotland or Safety Camera Scotland. The Council receives details of these campaigns on launch and may ensure that these are shared across our own social media channels to provide those local reminders and behaviour change prompts to those that live within this council boundary area. In terms of employee implications, item 4 details a successful grant fund from Cycling Scotland, which allowed the continuation of the Bikeability Scotland coordinator for 12 months. And item 5 details the financial implications relating to this report, whether items have been funded through our own revenue budget, a Cycling Scotland grant, or by other partner organisations. In terms of this report, there's no other implications for this report here, and the forum is asked to note the content of the report and to support ongoing activity.
Thank you very much, Colin. A lot of detail in there as usual. So thanks for all the work that you're doing there. And obviously at this time of year we get the road safety calendar as well. And I've been, does that go to every member? Does every member get access to that? Because I know that I did, but I thought it was, I wondered if it was.
The printed final calendar would go to every member, and members of the forum are part of the voting.
What meant was the judging of it?
The judging, it's members of the Road Safety Forum that are part of the judging, as well as a number of council officers.
I know that things changed over a period of time. I think COVID had an impact on that, but remember we used to have like we had Norbert Duntresangle, or denture danglers as my mate used to call it.
Not an easy one to say.
Yeah. And there was another company that was a driving agency, Guy Murphy, remember him? So it was quite a big thing, but that gets scaled quite back a wee bit because of COVID. Is it worthwhile considering inviting all councillors to participate in that rather than just the Road Safety Forum members? Maybe that's give you a bit of a headache, but...
Yeah, we can certainly consider that and have a wee chat internally. Just in terms of Norbert Duntresangle, in previous years we have had some support from external companies who've provided some funding. We've not had that in the last couple of years simply for the fact that we've not had any interested companies. So if MD comes to the fore, then we would obviously welcome any company coming on board with us and adding some extra value to that scheme or any other of our road safety educational schemes. So please let me know if you have any ideas or any other connections that might be beneficial.
Yeah, okay. So, Colin, did you want to...
Yeah, just kind of quickly, Chair, just in terms of the kind of calendar competition, I think up until COVID it was restricted to obviously forum members, but I think what Colin and his team have done just now in terms of the online voting side of it, it just lends itself to, we could open it out probably for next year though, because this year's
it's done now, it's done and dusted now. Yeah.
So that, that's pretty good, thanks.
Giving people a chance. Ralph Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that report, which I support. Just point out on the walk to school, I do have secondaries whose distance to the nearest school is well over 20 miles and primaries that's well over 10 miles. And just to keep that in mind. Exceptional, I suppose. Thank you.
And is there safe routes to school for them? 20 miles, really, is that right, Ralph? You just forget how big the authority is there. Wow, that's a shift, isn't it?
Chair,
Yeah, Ralph?
just thinking of from Dar and from Lead Hills
Yeah.
to bigger, even from my village, it's 16 miles
Wow.
to the secondary school.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's a good, I mean, it's a nice idea to think of active travel, and I have done it, but you couldn't really
No.
do it on a regular basis.
I know those roads it would be. Yeah. Colin? Colin Smith?
Yeah, just want to jump in that obviously sometimes distance is obviously a major hurdle, and that's not going to be possible. With these schemes, particularly primary schools where it's maybe on the precipice, the schools do encourage inclusivity there, so if it's a pupil or a group of pupils that can't walk or cycle, then they're still included within the school, or maybe do some laps of the playground, just so they're included in some shape or form. But it's not even just the actual walking to school that's the important part. A lot of it is the educational benefit of what the purpose and what the benefit for health and the environment and the climate is of sustainable and active travel choices. So I think it's just quite important to remember it's the educational side of things as well, and behaviour change attitudes, rather than just solely the method of travel to and from school. But yeah, some people certainly have got a longer journey than others.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. On 3.1.2, the Junior Road Safety Officer Scheme, 99 schools participated. How many schools didn't participate then? I mean, I forget how many. Maybe I should know this, but maybe David sitting next to you will help you with that one if you don't know yourself, Colin.
Yeah, we've got 125
Right, so
primary
that's-
schools, so that number does change on a yearly basis, and probably come the start of 2026, that number will go up as well, as we get some schools later on board with it. We've never been at the point where we've had 125 participate in a year. We've never had 100%. It does kind of vary from year to year, but between 100 is about the ballpark figure for participation. The schools that don't participate, a lot of the times it'll just come down to resources within that individual school at that time. But if they're not participating within this, we'll normally find they're participating with some of the other schemes as well. It's not as if they've pulled out of everything, but they've got certain other activities that they do focus on.
You've answered my question. I was going to ask why some schools might not, but then you've answered it. So thanks very much. No more questions. So I agree to note that paper. Item 5, school car free zones, CFZs update, and that's pages 25 to 36. Colin Smith again, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to outline the progress in identifying future school car-free zones and to devise the form of the recommendation for the next phase of primary schools for consideration. Section 3 sets out the background, whereby a report was presented to the Forum on the 1st of October 2024, with the outcome of the pilot car-free zones implemented at Burnside Primary School in Rutherglen and St Joseph's Primary School in Blantyre. Support allowed these to be established on a permanent basis, and this report also contained the recommended characteristics that should apply when we're considering further car-free zones. These characteristics are detailed within section 3.4. Following this, all schools in South Lanarkshire were assessed on their suitability and requirement for a car-free zone. So using the criteria outlined, an initial sift of schools was conducted, and this was informed by additional knowledge of repeated concerns or inquiries regarding school journey times and issues that were reported with those schools. These were then examined in more detail, and we considered the current facilities available or potential drop-off facilities nearby those schools as well, such as park and stride points. This list was further refined by considering the impact on residential properties round about the schools, the road lengths affected, as well as the general specifics of the locations. Following this, the 6 schools identified for the next phase of development are provided within item 4.6, with specific information relating to each of these schools provided in items 4.8 to 4.13. The 6 schools being St Elizabeth's and Hamilton, St Columkills and Rutherglen Carnwath, Glenlee and Hamilton, Newfield and Stonehouse and Kirkland Park and Straven. All these schools have engaged with the traffic and transportation team previously, and initial contact has been made with the head teachers regarding potential car-free zones, and all have expressed their interest in potential implementation at their school. Initial plans showing the potential car-free zone areas have been provided at Appendix 1, and recommendations are set out within Section 5 of the report. It's recommended that a consultation process be initiated to explore the introduction of car-free zones at the schools listed within this paper, to include formal engagement with each school and engagement with elected members and emergency services. As noted at 5.2, if this is still supported thereafter, it's then recommended that residents are issued with consultation letters and invited to provide their feedback on the proposals, and a public drop-in session is held, ideally at each individual school, providing residents and stakeholders the opportunity to review the plans and share their feedback directly. Item 5.3 recommends outcomes of the consultation be reported to a future Road Safety Forum meeting, alongside recommendations as to whether to proceed with the schemes at the schools listed. Subject to the approval of the forum, further engagement will be undertaken with the schools, and if support remains, work will begin on further developing the consultation materials which will be required. In terms of this report, there are no employee implications, as all work will be undertaken by existing employees, and costs to develop the proposals and the consultation process will be met from existing budgets, with any future signing requirements potentially being met from external budgets. In terms of Section 9, the establishment of further car-free zones will continue the positive impact on the environment noted during the trials of the current car-free zones. There are no other implications or requirements as a result of this report, and the forum is asked to note this report and that recommendations detailed in Section 5 be supported as the agreed position of the forum.
Thank you very much, Colin. I have Kenny McCreary. Kenny.
Thanks, Jim. I've actually been asked to ask you this question, Colin. I think it was emailed in advance, so I'm sure you'll have an answer. I don't know where Carnwath is, but it's relating to Carnwath Primary School, where the car park's closed apparently, and it also contains a drop-off zone. So the question really is, why is the car park closed? Thank you.
Yep, I can answer that. And certainly the car park was closed, I think, during COVID initially, as a lot of changes were made at that time. But thereafter, the decision was made to keep the car park closed on safety grounds. That was a decision that the school had implemented, but with the support of the school community. The dad actually questioned, petitioned the school community, and the parents were supportive of that action being made. The car park isn't fully closed. The drop-off area is used by after school. There's two, I believe, minibuses used by after school, and it can also be accessed by those that are blue badge holders, etc. So the school manage that on a daily basis and allow access to those that are needing access there. I think just in general terms as well, majority of the car park is taken up by staff and people that are actually working within the school. And with the parents coming to use that car park as well, there's no space, and it just causes a lot of issues and concerns there. So the decision that's made has been the best decision for the school and the safety of the pupils, and has been supported by the wider community there.
I think that's a key part, in fact. If that's what the school community want and the parents want, then that's it. Thanks, Colin.
No bother, thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Kenny. Ralph.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that knowledge about Carnwath Primary. It does look on the face of it as though the cure may be worse than the problem. Just on further congestion further out from the school. I do admit, pity to see the car park closed, but when I last did surveys on it, the most dangerous bit about the whole thing was people exiting that car park at speed and then driving in front of it. So they've been careful driving into the school, dropping off kids, turn around in the car park and then whoosh. So I can see the point and the concerns on the car park, but I'm sure it'll be further meaningful consultation. Thank you.
Colin? You think you're still in? Can I ask about Glenlee Primary? This is in my ward. There's two roads, as is mentioned, and the main entrance is Anderson Street. I think that's officially the main entrance, but I think the Reed Street section is more busier. What are you proposing there for the two streets? Is it the same thing?
Yeah, for Glenlee, both the front, Anderson Street and the back, I believe Reed Street are
yeah.
both included in the proposal.
Yeah.
So there's a map for each of the schools in Appendix 1, so you should notice that both of those roads are included within the car-free zone.
All right. Sorry, I didn't see that in the appendix. Right. Okay. Yep, there it is. Very clear. Well done. Thank you. Any other? I don't have any other questions. So thank you. We'll agree to note that paper. Item 6 is Police Scotland Lanarkshire Division Road Safety update, and it's pages 37 to 40, and it's Lorna Hinshelwood. Lorna, please.
Thanks, Chair. Road Safety Forum Police Report, number 1.1. The purpose of the report is to update the Road Safety Forum of forthcoming campaigns, discuss ongoing national and local campaigns. Number 2, recommendations. The Forum's asked to approve the following recommendations: that the information set out in this report in relation to road safety campaigns be noted, and the verbal update regarding the road safety campaigns be noted. I'll jump to number 4. 4.1, there's no notable trends identified for the last quarter. However, motorcyclist and pedestrian facilities increased over the last year. That's been noted and will continue to form the core of our engagement work for the coming year. E-scooters and e-bikes continue to be a hot topic and source of discussion, and that was previously discussed by Inspector Hoggins today. We are having some issues at the wind farms across South Lanarkshire. They're experiencing an increase in the use of off-road bikes. Lanarkshire Division have deployed their quad bikes and off-road bikes. They're using these to carry out additional patrols. Some of the bikes were funded by the Community Safety Partnership. We're seeing some positive results there, good feedback from the community, and wind farm owners will continue with that work. 4.2, notable detections, criminal use of the roads. Motorcycle engagement is up significantly in Lanarkshire and compared to last year's campaign. We had 95 engagements to date, albeit this was up to the end of August. 95 engagements to date compared with 57 in the entire campaign last year. Sorry, it does say they're accurate to 11th of August 25. Of particular note is a reduction of motorcycle fatalities in the same period to date. That's providing a link between engagement and prevention. Road safety campaigns from April to November. We had the 1st to the 28th of April, our Fatal 5 campaign, focus on drink, drug driving, careless, dangerous driving, mobile phones, speeding and seatbelts. In March 21st to 26th of September, we had our National Motorcycle Safety Campaign. 2nd to the 15th of June, Two Wheels campaign. That was our National Police Chief Council led campaign focusing on cyclists and motorcyclists. 1st to the 19th of July was our Summer Drink Drug Drive campaign. 18th to the 24th of August, Drug Drive Week. It's a bit of a mouthful for me today. The 22nd of September to 5th of October was our focus on young drivers Fatal 5 campaign, and again that was National Police Chief Council led, as was our Operation Dark Nights for pedestrians from 27th October, and that carries on to the 9th of November. We did run Close Pass in August with 12 engagements with 6 bikes and 6 motor cars stopped. And again, we used community safety partner funded equipment that included the mat and the camera. We continue to service our monthly local complaints, and that's headed up by Inspector Hoggins. 4.3, a quick synopsis of our stats. Stats are from April to August 25 in comparison to 2024. Speeding is down 37%. Dangerous driving is up 28%. Drink drug driving is down 0.48%. I know that is marginal, but that's probably one of the first slight drops we've seen in a wee while. Seatbelts down 38.24 and mobile phones down 8.20. 4.4, Lanarkshire Division is committed to ensuring the road network is safe, along with partners and the Road Safety Governance Board, who have oversight of the reviewing all road crashes and offending to provide a proportionate response to any concerned trends or patterns identified. And that is all from me, thanks.
Thanks, Lorna. The table at 4.3 does make some interesting reading, doesn't it? Speeding down 37%, but dangerous driving up 28%. I would have thought there'd be a kind of connection with speeding and dangerous driving. That's really interesting to see that. Is there any? Can you provide any sort of background or feedback? Or?
So yeah, you can think the two of them go together. Sometimes it could be seen as two bites at the cherry to have the two charges, but dangerous driving can come by itself in the manner of should we have an area of boy racers are not necessarily speeding, but
Right.
if you get where I'm going with that, they may be driving inappropriately. Certain road accidents as well might not be speeding, but the manner in which they're driving is dangerous or careless. That probably explains that. I know the drug driving one, but there's only one between 209 this year, 210 last year, so it is just marginal.
So, it's careless driving, isn't there, on the table, but does dangerous take that in as well? Does that
So, dangerous driving falls under your Section 2 Road Traffic Act and careless driving falls under Section 3. They are different charges. And it can be sometimes it's down to the actual officer. I might determine careless different from you or dangerous different from you, but ultimately it'll be the fiscal that decides whether it's the dangerous or careless.
The reason I'm asking, it's not on there. You've got things like seatbelt and mobile and everything else that's listed, but dangerous is listed, but careless isn't. I just wondered if the reason it's not listed is maybe just encompassed in that one report, that one sort of figure. That's interesting. I mean, it's good. It's a good read, except for the dangerous driving one. Seatbelts. I mean, that's an interesting one as well. It's down 38% because the Safer South Lanarkshire Board, when it was getting reported, I think I remember maybe Kenny you'll remember it, Kenny, but I remember when it was quite high for people not wearing seatbelts, and I was just, I'd say, surprised to see that, because you jump into your car and
it beeps.
It just seems like a normal. You don't go out the house without putting your shoes on. You don't jump in your car without putting your seatbelt on. I was amazed that there was so many people. But for the figure to have dropped so much, that shows that it has been high then, doesn't it? Yep. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, the figure there's 21 this year, 34 last year.
Yep.
It is probably quite a small comparison in general terms. And a lot of these figures we do see spike when we have our campaigns, or sometimes as well when we have new probationers to the street as well. We start them with the basics when they're out, the guys in response looking, actively targeting seatbelts, things like that. So that's when we generally see the spikes.
And the mobile phone one, that's encouraging to see that come down a bit. I'd like to see that come a lot lower. But it's just really surprising the amount of people you see. If you're on duty, sometimes I just wish I was a cop on duty, because you stop at traffic lights and you look around at a driver and they're sitting like this and their hands are here. They're not scratching their leg, you know what they're doing. It's quite clear what they're doing. When you think of the penalty, it's a £200 fine and 6 penalty point. I mean, that's quite a severe, rightly so.
Yeah.
And I'm just amazed at the amount of people that still fiddle about or touch their phones. And you don't need to be on a call, do you? You could be holding it. Is that?
Yeah, it's use of a handheld mobile phone, so you don't need to. You see a lot of drivers. Well, occasionally I'll see me when I'm off duty. They're just talking on their phone and driving, because they almost don't believe if it's not here, they're not using it. But it's use a handheld mobile phone as opposed to make a phone call.
So when it's on a amount That's okay, isn't it? It's not okay, it's not illegal, but
It's
you would,
it's a real grey area. Define the term use. If it's up there, if you can activate it from your car, then
yeah,
it's hands-free. If you're stationary and you quick press somebody, again, you're hands-free. I know if you're using the handheld and you're looking at your sat-nav, for instance, that's using a handheld. You could get your penalty points for that. And the guarantee, if it's a traffic officer you meet, you'll be getting them.
yeah. So hands-free means that you're not holding your hand, but if you touch it with your finger, that
If
is,
it's on if it's mounted, yes. If you're using it
touch it.
anyway in your hand, it's really got to be.
glad you said
mounted.
that, because that is a grey area, and you see maybe a car doesn't have sat-nav built into it, so they're touching their phone.
Yep.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Any other questions? Ralph?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for that report, Lorna. You touched on something in your previous report, and I didn't quite take it in, but it's really a question about in some police force areas, other parts of the UK, seem to encourage reports, submissions, if you like, from community handheld, you call them speed guns for want of anything else, and also submissions for possible dangerous driving. Now, I wouldn't want to see these things ending in penalties, but I think the idea on speed detection was it's automated, and what happens is the registered owner gets a warning letter and nothing else. Elsewhere, it seemed to be being encouraged to submit dash cam recordings of dangerous driving, which I'm always worried they could be set up, it could be pernicious. But I just wondered what our view in this area is about, about submitting dash cam or speed gun information from the public. And I think you just briefly mentioned it last time, but I didn't take it in. Thank you.
Thanks. So just to clarify, just so I'm getting right here, do you mean if a member of the public is to hand us dash cam footage of what they perceive to be dangerous driving, or I'm not sure I'm fully understanding?
Well, yes, and that's my concern, that you could probably engineer something if you wanted to. Just pick it at the wrong time. But I just wondered what your view is on submitting that sort of public information, which preferably would just lead to a warning if it was, if it was thought to be justified. Thanks.
If it was a genuine situation and it was perceived by police to be dangerous, then we could pursue that. We have seen, and you probably have seen it on the television as well, somebody who does have dash cam, who are set up by somebody in front of them, causing out, sharp braking, so they run into the back of them for an insurance claim. And that was a kind of nationwide scam that was going on for a while. It would really need to depend on the footage at that time. Did we think it was viable? If it was, yes, we could pursue that, but it goes with your recorded evidence. How many witnesses have you got? The cars are also, for speeding, our cars are calibrated as well. There's our speed guns are calibrated. Unlikely members of the public are going to, if they had speeding equipment, they're not going to be having it calibrated. So all that's probably highly unlikely. Even if we do, being in circumstances where we could do speeding, just one police vehicle is behind a speeding vehicle. If we didn't have a speed gun, we would follow them over a certain distance. They would then have the traffic officers out to calibrate the police car to make sure that that was accurate, the speedometer. So there's a lot of technicalities there with speeding. Dangerous driving is really perception.
Thank you.
It's a bit long-winded.
I had experience where I mentioned to the police something that I'd seen just there at Peacock Cross, actually, and I had it on my dash cam. And the officer at the time, it's a number of years ago, asked me if I would provided, I did. I didn't go reporting it, but I just mentioned it in a conversation, and they said, "Have you got? Can you get footage?" I said, and the person, I ended up in court as a witness, but not actually called up. I went twice as a witness. You know what happens in court? You turn up, and then they send away, and then I get notified rather than go a third time, the person admitted it. It was really horrendous what they did, and they were convicted.
Yeah.
So,
That's a good example then.
yeah, so that actually happened, Ralph, just based on my footage. It was so blatant, it was just incredible that somebody would drive like that. But anyway, Colin, you've got your, want to come in to speak?
Thanks, Chair. And just kind of to add on what Lorna was saying, if it's okay, down in England and Wales, they've got a national dash cam portal where the public can submit that to the police authorities. In Scotland, Police Scotland have been looking at that. I'm only aware of that via the kind of the Road Safety Governance Board. So the kind of implementation of it is not yet there, but I do know it's something that Police Scotland have been looking at. So it would provide, essentially down in England, you can submit this. There's a company called Nextbase have developed it, and many authorities down south have actually signed up to it. So I know we are progressing that across Scotland as well. Thanks.
Big Brother's watching, eh? Because Nextbase, that's a manufacturer. There's somebody got a dash cam in it. Yeah. Okay, I don't have anybody else. Thank you very much, Lorna.
Thanks.
And can we all agree to note that paper? Thank you. Item 8 on the agenda, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, South Lanarkshire Area Road Safety Update, pages 41 to 44, and it's Paul Duncan. Paul, if you could request to speak. There we go.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Watch Commander Paul Duncan, Local Area Liaison Officer for South Lanarkshire. I'll jump straight into the stats in terms of number of road traffic collisions. I've kind of broken them down in the report based upon the 4 localities. And first of all, I'm glad to say that, well, my report shows Q4 of last financial year, 24-25. During that period, there were 0 fatalities that we attended in Q4. So in terms of a locality breakdown, Camglen, we attended 5 RTCs with a total of 4 casualties. Clydesdale, we attended 19 RTCs with 6 casualties. Of those 19 RTCs in the Clydesdale locality, 8 of them occurred on the M74, and of those 8, 4 were involving HGVs, lorries. East Kilbride, we attended 11 RTCs with a total of 5 casualties, and the Hamilton locality, we attended 9 RTCs with 3 casualties. That gives us totals of 44 RTCs with 18 casualties. Now, that 44, that's an increase from the same Q4 period from the previous year. We attended 39 during that period, so we have an increase of 5. But positive news in terms of the number of casualties is that from the same quarter the previous year, we had 31 casualties. So we've seen a reduction of 13 down to 18. So that's positive news. And also, as well as the 0 fatal casualties, there was 1 in the previous period last year, so that obviously represents a reduction this year, which we are delighted to see. Now, in terms of activities that we've been up to in Q4, we ran 2 community payback workshops sessions in February to a total of 16 people. Now, quite often people involved in community payback sessions that come to our sessions, they're dealing with people that have had road traffic offences. So we focus our input on those sessions around about road safety as well as home fire safety as well. We have virtual reality headsets that we use to educate people, and it shows it kind of virtual reality is quite good. It shows it puts you in place of a car crash that actually happens, and it's quite graphic in some circumstances. You know, it's quite hard hitting as well, and we like to think it does have a positive effect on showing people the impacts that RTCs can have. They can obviously be quite traumatic. We also can run biker down sessions, and they're focused on motorcyclists. Now, in Q4, we didn't run any sessions at all for biker down, but we have ran other sessions as the year has progressed. We tend to have a greater uptake when the weather improves. So I'll be able to provide figures on them in the next meeting that we conducted in the summer period. Q4, we presented road safety presentations, Drive to Arrive, to over 160 pupils at high schools in Hamilton. So we have a kind of national presentation that we can deliver to S5 and S6 year groups. One of the problems is we do offer these presentations out to all the schools, but due to the nature of the age group themselves at S5, S6, quite often the main focus for the school is obviously educating the pupils in terms of getting their exam results correct. So not all schools take us up on the offer of the presentations, but we do always offer them out anyway. Another thing that we've been doing quite a lot this year, and it started in Q4 last year, was Morrison's Energy Group. They're the ones who'll come and quite often do your smart meter, your gas and electric meter readings. And so their drivers, they accumulate a high volume of short drives every day. And if you multiply it by the number of drivers and nationally, etc., it's multiple thousands of trips. So what they noticed was that due to the high volume of journeys that their drivers were completing, that they were involved in a number of RTCs. I think anecdotally, most of them were kind of minor in nature. However, they were involved in road traffic collisions. So they approached us for input in terms of educating their drivers around about improving their road safety, etc. So we've been running quite a lot of events with Morrison's Group over the course of the year, and in Q4 24-25, we presented to 100 of their employees. And again, anecdotally, the feedback we're receiving is that the number of RTCs that the drivers are involved in it is starting to decrease. I'll try and get some figures from them. It's one of my colleagues that's dealing with it, but I'll try to get some figures from them for the next meeting. Also, our community action team in Lanarkshire, we have received what's called Good Egg Child Car Seat Safety Training in January, and we'll put that to good use. So that's all about helping parents fit their kids' car seats correctly in cars. Something like 8 out of 10 are fitted incorrectly. So when we're out and about in the community, we have a couple of car seats here that we can use to demonstrate how you fit them correctly. So hopefully that will have a positive impact as well. In Q4, myself and one of my colleagues attended Transport Scotland's Safe Systems course in Glasgow. That's quite an interesting course. I think there's quite a lot of police colleagues on that as well. Sitting at a table with Police Scotland colleagues, they mentioned about how drug driving is now more common than drunk driving. So that's something where we can start to focus our attention to as well in our presentations. That'll be filtered through national presentations that we deliver locally into South Lanarkshire as time progresses. National campaigns that are getting run by Road Safety Scotland at the moment. The current ones are focusing on, it's a common one, speed campaign. 1 in 5 deaths in Scotland on Scotland's roads are caused by speeding. They also have a distractions campaign. It's one of the most common causes of incidents in terms of RTCs. Seatbelt campaign is currently active. On average, 13% of those killed over the last 5 years were not wearing a seatbelt. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the drug driving campaign is prevalent at the moment. For the community action team for Scottish Fire and Rescue in Q1, We continue delivering, offering the presentations to high schools, and also using our virtual reality headsets as well, which are in the process of getting renewed. Actually, we're becoming more up to date. That should be rolled out quite soon. FireReach is a kind of 5-day course. I don't know how many of you are familiar here with the FireReach course. It's kind of for young people, S3, S4s. They go into Coatbridge Community Fire Station, and it's a quick train how to become a firefighter in the course of a week, and it teaches young children resilience, team building skills, communication, etc., how to work as a team. It can be groups of individuals from different schools, different backgrounds, and getting them to come together and teach them about how to become a firefighter. Road safety plays a part in that as well. So in quarter 4, there were no courses ran for FireReach for South Lanarkshire, but there were 3 ran in quarter 1. We'll continue to run the community payback workshops as well. And Morrison's group training is continuing throughout the course of the year. And during the summer period, we looked at where, as there's quite a prevalence for RTCs on the M74 corridor, in the summer periods, we go into the service stations and we deliver drive on the left literature, because we're trying to cover foreign, tourists, etc. And sometimes they just simply forget which side of the road they're driving on, and it's particularly prevalent in the north of Scotland when they're out visiting the Highlands, etc. And they'll come out to a junction and just simply forget which side of the road that they're driving on, and it can have quite catastrophic consequences. So that's something that we focus on the M74 in the summer months. And that is the end of my report. Any questions?
Okay. Thanks very much, Paul. Detailer. Excuse me. Really interesting, point there you make about the child seats, the kiddies, what do you call it, a good egg?
Yeah.
But I have heard that there's not good statistics about how people are attaching these seats, but that's quite a scary figure. 8 out of 10, you say, that aren't correctly fitted.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it's a long time since I used one myself. My kids are all well up, but they aren't always the easiest things to work out. And I think probably because there's different designs and different types, and then you've got these ISOFIX that are on the cars. I've seen these little metal sort of hooks. I see them on my car, and I've had experience just recently with one situation where somebody was a passenger, and she connected it, and it clicked in, and it felt quite solid. But so is part of the problem the fact that there's so many different brands and types of fittings available, other than just the ISOFIX?
I suppose that would be a problem. Also, they would all come with fitting instructions, but my suspicion would be that a lot of people don't really read the instructions. They just kind of fit it in and kind of do their own quick fix, and then that's just what they get used to over the course of time. But there will be a manufacturer's guideline in terms of how to fit the seat. So the course that my colleagues attended, they focused on the main manufacturers and so that they've got skills in dealing with different types of car seats as well. So yeah, that'll get rolled out at any events that we attend. Basically, we take the car seats with us, and we will do demonstrations for free, obviously, to members of the public in terms of how to fit their own individual car seats as well.
And there's nothing on the report about injuries or anything worse than that. But have you seen situations where poorly fitted child seats have caused injury to the child? Have you seen that happen?
Personally speaking, I haven't. We have a new reporting mechanism coming into place in the fire service within the next month, and my hope is that new reporting mechanism will be able to give us some better understanding in terms of stats, etc., around this kind of thing, because the current reporting mechanism doesn't have that ability within it.
And I suppose you could end up with an injury in a car that doesn't involve an accident. Say, for example, somebody has to brake quite sharply. If there's a poorly fitted seatbelt, a child could be thrown, and that wouldn't come under an RTC, I don't suppose. But if that child was taken to hospital or taken to the doctor, is there a mechanism where that gets reported and it filters in? I think through roads, you know, we get statistics, but it's only, we only know about it if it's come through a certain channel. So if a child is injured through a poorly fitted seat, and that injury has been treated in hospital, maybe asking you a question you probably can't answer, but is there a way that the way that injury occurred fed back into the system? Because I think that would be very useful. But because that figure, 8 out of 10 that are poorly fitted, there's bound to be kids that's been injured as a result of this, but we don't seem to hear about it.
Yeah, there's no reporting for that specifically, Chair. We can report on the ages of casualties, etc., but not the precise nature of the actual accident itself.
Thanks. Ralph Parker.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that report, Paul. I just wondered, with enforcement against parking on pedestrian pavements, have there been any access issues for emergency vehicles? Has there been any change, or have we not noticed anything? Thanks.
Hi, yeah. The only place that I'm aware of that's been reported to me, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it's Kings Heath Avenue in Rutherglen is the only time such occurrences have been fed back through to myself. And I believe that was last summer. I think I sent the information on to Colin at the time.
Thank you.
So can I ask you on that, Paul? You hear people say this, you know, if a car's blocking access and a fire engine needs to get in there, they'll just, you know, they're not going to wait for somebody to come out of their house. And it's maybe a bit of folklore that a fire engine will just push a car out the road if necessary. Has that ever happened in a situation like you just mentioned?
We would generally really do our best to try to avoid that. Again, personally, I've never been involved in anything like that. We can, if you get a bunch of you out to move one vehicle, for example, you can move it by bouncing it out of the way, kind of thing, using the springs of the vehicle. Generally speaking, what you would probably do is just sit stationary and put your sirens on and put your horns on, etc. Get the attention of someone to come and move the vehicle. If it was a definitive, this is a serious incident, we know it is a fire, we know there's people involved in the property, then yeah, we'd probably use the vehicle to try to bump cars out of the way. I've personally never been involved in that, thankfully.
Thanks. And that's good to know then that it doesn't really come to that, and it's quite good feedback and a good question, Ralph, because we've experienced lots of issues about bus routes having to be redirected and things like that, but I'm glad to hear that there's only been one instance where that's impacted on your service with a car that's partially blocked the road. So I don't have any other questions. Anybody? Any other questions for Paul? Paul, thank you very much for your attendance and your patience waiting to the end of that agenda there. So, and I don't have any other business, so it's up to me to thank you all for your attendance. I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
That was a good bit discussion.
It was, aye.